you're starting.
Good, thank you. So you can see we drove up in a little red vehicle that was our mom's, and she and our sister Kelly found these cars in Mendocino on a trip about 10 years ago, and mom ended up falling in love with the vehicle, using it up there. So she bought one, and it became sort of a little iconic sort of point of reference around St. Helena with her driving around in it.
Yes, it did. So I'm Beth Novak Milliken.
And I'm Lindy Novak.
Thank you all very much for being here and being part of our first virtual harvest party ever. We are very, very glad to have you here. As you can see, we are in front of the house, and although we can't have you here in person, which we wish that we could, we are so glad that you're here with us, and we hope that we can make you feel like you actually are here with us.
Oh, is it my turn again?
Yes, it is.
Thank you all very much. We know a lot of you are very loyal customers and friends as well, and we appreciate you tuning in. And if you don't have Spottswoode open, run and get your bottles, your corkscrews, and your glasses, and drink along with us.
Yeah, because getting through this without that might not be particularly easy.
We hardly recommend it.
Highly recommend it, exactly. No, we're excited to be here, and we have Aaron and James will be joining us as well. Aaron Weinkoff, our winemaker and vineyard manager, and James Reevy, our assistant winemaker, and of course our special guest, Will Blackman, excuse me. But before we get there, we just want to let you know again that you feel like that you are here with us, and also simply to share that next year, amazingly enough, will be our family's 50th year of owning this property, which we find to be absolutely astounding. It's just amazing that that much time has gone by and that we've been lucky enough to steward this land for that long.
Yeah, kind of dates us too, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
So a number of you kind of know our family story, but just to kind of reiterate it in brief, we moved up here from Southern California in 1972. I'm the oldest of the 5 of us Novak children, and I was 15. Beth was 11. And our dad was a doctor and wanted a change of lifestyle. We had some friends who moved up here. We came up to visit them, and my dad decided sort of, spontaneously that he wanted to bail on medicine and become a farmer, and wanted a change of lifestyle. So we found this property, which is actually, it's very lovely, as you can see. But there were some of us in the family that were a little hesitant about the move, shall we say.
That would be the 15-year-old.
The 15-year-old. And we were leaving a sophisticated beach community and coming to what was very much a farm community. It was quiet here. It felt to me a little bit backward, but I think the majority of the children approached it with a sense of adventure, and certainly our parents did.
Well, and luckily too, at that time, you have to think that Napa Valley was entirely undiscovered. St. Helena was a very sleepy town, and indeed land prices reflected that. So the reason that we're able to be here as our family is that land back then was extremely inexpensive. I mean, it was $4,000 an acre, and today it starts at $400,000 an acre if you can find it. So we're really here by luck. And when we moved here, the estate was called Spottswoode. Many of you have visited us, we know, but there's a beautiful gate out front and a sign up that says Spottswoode. The property here was established in the late 1800s by a German immigrant who was a hotel manager and designed this old estate Victorian home after the hotel that he managed down in Monterey that no longer exists. It burned, but he laid out the grounds, so all the beautiful plantings, so and established the whole property, planted vineyard. When we bought it, let's see, he and his wife owned it until about 1906 when it was sold to a family who named it Stonehurst, and then in 1908 it was sold to a family who named it Lindenhurst, and they built the stone wall out front and put up a sign that said Lindenhurst. And then when Mrs. Spotts purchased it in 1910, she named it Spottswoode in her late husband's memory. So when we moved here, when our parents bought this property, it was already known as and called Spottswoode. Now, a wine had never been made here called Spottswoode because, in the meantime, things like prohibition and other things transpired. And so when we moved here, we bought this. Our parents bought it from descendants of Mrs. Spotts, a 90-year-old woman and her 60-year-old daughter who were selling grapes to what was then the Napa Valley Cooperative. And it was a very tough go at that time. It really was undiscovered. And how many wineries were here?
About 35, I think.
Something like that. So it was a really different place, and in a very nice way.
Yeah. And the house when I looked in the gate, I thought it was the Munsters house. You know, it was cobwebby and dark and sort of formidable. So it needed a little TLC, but it was large enough for the 5 of us. It's very close to town, so it made our mom's life easy in terms of transporting us around. And it came with some vineyard behind it, which was very convenient because our parents did not know anything about growing grapes or making wine, but they had decided that that's what they wanted to try to do. So
exactly. So they didn't know anything. They might have had Matus, they might have had Lancers. They really were not fine wine drinkers. We planted the old pre-prohibition vineyard. Post-prohibition vineyard, excuse me, replanted the vineyard. Then our dad had to go back to work because he
Cash
was earning
flow.
earning nothing.
Yeah.
Needed to make some money. Was an ER doctor for a few years here in St. Helena, and then died unexpectedly of a heart attack. And that left our mother here who was a remarkable woman, to start this winery on her own, which she did in 1982.
And we started selling grapes, and then after a few years, we had various people that were buying our fruit, the Schaefers and Duckhorns in particular, that suggested that we should start making our own wine. And our mom was kind of taken with that idea. So our first vintage of Cabernet was the 1982, and we kind of started on a trajectory since then, a very fortunate one.
Exactly. So now we want to we're enjoying the 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. And we hope that some of you are as well, although if you're on the East Coast, maybe you've already moved into reds. But we want to introduce Aaron Weinkauf, our winemaker and vineyard manager, who just came on the screen. He is here to speak with Will Blackman, who has his wine MVP. He's a really, really great man who has visited us before. There he is. Hooray, Will. And we look forward. He visited us here in the summer and has become a great friend of our winery, and is very taken with wines that sort of speak to a history and a time and place, which is exactly what we do. So we recognize that he would be the perfect person to speak about these wines. So now the 2 of you are tasting the 17 and the 18. And Will, you're on mute, so you need to unmute. There you go.
Take it away.
I was letting you finish because I'm gonna talk, so I was letting you finish.
You go. You're good. First go.
Hey, Will. Hello, everybody.
And we'll see you at the end.
As Beth and Lindy said, Aaron Weinkauf, winemaker, vineyard manager, and Will Blackman from Wine MVP. We're just here to talk a little bit about the 17 and the 18. And I just wanted to take advantage and say I'm super excited to have Will here, hear his take on the wines, because after all, this is a harvest party, and I always get stuck in that harvest mentality because I look at wines, we've watched, this is our one chance to get it right when it comes to harvest. We've been watching everything evolve over the growing season, and then all of a sudden it comes time for us to start figuring out when we're going to pick. We have our impressions of what the vintage and year is going to be, and we're just really kind of chomping at the bit to see kind of what this wine is actually going to finally turn into. And so we come in and we have all of these kind of predictive visions of the wine, but it's oftentimes very different because we look at wines differently because we're always building from back forward instead of looking at things from a moment and reflecting on that. So I always appreciate that outside input, and super happy to have Will look at the 17s and 18s, which I will say 17 is the current vintage available to everybody, and the 18 is a preview vintage that's going to be released to the mailing list early next March, I believe.
Very nice. Yes, and so everyone, as you heard, Will Blackman, former 12-year NFL veteran, won the Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, and I've enjoyed wine my whole career. Actually became part of my pregame ritual, as I would have a couple of glasses the night before. And then, just my passion grew because I fell in love with the history of the wine. The same way I fell in love with football. Being a little kid, my father would show me these old school VHS films of the guys who made the game, who was involved in the history. That's the same way I fell in love with the wine, the viticulture, the stories, the fact that, one glass, you could be in a different country, not because you're drunk, but because you're actually enjoying the glass. So that's why I was so excited to, one, feature Spottswoode in my subscription club called the Wine MVP, but also to take part of this because of the rich history and just a little bit of my wine background. I just finished my WSET level 3, and I finished my Court of Masters level 1. So I am all in.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, so we're looking real quick at the 17 first. Little bit of background for this, just to remind everybody. This is the wine that was just released. It's showing its normal youthfulness of being a little tight. So any decanting people give to it is always appreciated. But this was a wine that, regardless of everything else, we are extremely proud of, just because it was the first of a series of a number of challenging vintages. It was there were a lot of real high heat periods throughout the whole season, but the worst of them was right around Labor Day, where we had 10 days over 100 degrees, with 3 of those over 115 degrees. And it really challenges us for all of the vineyard management, all of the attention we have to give to everything else, and then just trying to roll with the punches that Mother Nature is throwing. So it's just it's a wine that we now look back with great fondness and appreciation.
Was 17 was also 17 the year for some of the fires too? Was it 17?
Exactly. This is very true, and I oftentimes kind of skip over that and don't even think about that when I'm talking about it.
No, I understand. Yeah,
It had been totally picked off before the fires even hit. So we were really lucky. We had finished literally picking a day before the fires hit. So we were evacuated. Yeah. We had to close the doors, but everything was at a perfect window, because everything we had just finished picking hadn't started fermentation, and all the stuff we had picked 3-4 weeks before was nearly done with fermentation. So it was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I understand skipping over, but that's still part of, like,
for sure.
The 17 was saved, Yeah, and this is an interesting dynamic, just to tell the people why like we're doing this together, is because, right, you're the winemaker, you have your mind on how you want to produce the wine and make it. At the same time, you have the consumer in mind, right? And I think that's the hardest, because originally when I got into the wine business, I wanted to have my own wine label, and everyone was like, hey, you got to make sure you have the best. If you have the best this, the best that, you still have to be able to sell it. So I could make a wine, in my mindset, I could make a wine that I enjoy, but not necessarily like everyone else. So my question would be, like, for those getting into, who want to be a winemaker, how do you find that balance, that fine line of, you want to stay with the integrity of the brand, of the company as well, but also be appealing to the consumer?
Yeah, I basically liken that to about the hardest thing you can, other than dealing with the variables of Mother Nature as you're growing it through the season. It's pretty much one of the hardest things that you can do. And ultimately, you always have to stay true to your own palate, your own vision, because ultimately that's what lays that groundwork for whatever the wine is to become. But yeah, you absolutely have to take that into account. But I figure there's a couple things that I feel like we have going for us. One, we're always trying to make a wine that's of a time and of a place. So we're not trying to make something that's the same from year to year. We're not trying to make something that's just so overripe that it's just going to come across as one thing. We want there to be complexity. We want there to be diversity. We want people to understand and appreciate that about Spottswoode, and about the expectation of the care and attention we are going to give to that wine, regardless of the vintage.
Right.
And
yeah,
so,
because sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, and I was just gonna, and then with that, you always look for, it's hard to say, it's so cliche to say, we always want everything to just be ideally right. But that's right. In the end, that's the goal. That's where we get the balance. That's where we get the nuance and complexities and the longevity of it. So right. Hopefully in that, of course, we're still producing something that like.
Well, that helps you, because when each year you do different things to it, each bottle has its own style, its own personality. You don't want to make the same thing over and over again. I feel like that will make it even harder to tell that story. For example, the story for the 18 is completely different than the story for the 17, because, like you said, Mother Nature, it's different every single time.
Exactly. And that's always the funnest thing about these little, whether it's verticals, mini verticals, whatever it is, and to be able to sit and make these comparisons and see how different the 17 is from the 18. You see the tension, you see the freshness of the 17, And in and of itself, when you know a little bit about the vintage, that to me is one of the coolest things, because
Right.
I mean, some of these vines, because of that heat, they just stopped accumulating sugar. So you have a wine that's sitting here at 13.7 alcohol,
Right.
and yet this thing just has so much energy, so much to give. But you see a little bit of that reservation. You see that tension. You see the freshness, and to know that we were able to hang on to that through that heat and still have it presented like this, I always appreciate.
No, I think that's phenomenal. I think the body is amazing. Like you said, I can tell, like from the Psalms perspective, I can tell before I even try it. You know, you can tell by the color, it's still very young. But as you mentioned, I got that Bordeaux feel, right? The alcohol wasn't too high. It wasn't, you know, I don't feel like the warmth usual. It's, even though it's young, tight, it's still very like ready right now. You know, at the same time, you know, for other people's preferences, yes, this wine could hold on a little longer, but it's still enjoyable as it's in my glass right now.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's what we
Yeah.
do for. Go ahead.
No, is that now you're known for doing many fermentations? So is that due to like why is that? Better question.
Well, a lot of it just is somewhat infrastructural. I mean, ultimately, we're working with a vineyard that's now been here for over 100, what is it, almost 135 years. And obviously, the blocks have changed over that period of time. Come into a winery that was built in 1999. The tanks are there. We're not just going to scrap everything as things change. So a little bit of that is infrastructural. We have about 26 different vineyard blocks just on the estate. We bring those in. We co-ferment certain blocks in tanks to take advantage of the tank space and tank size that we have. And then we just go through and start evaluating all of those on an individual basis. So a lot of that's that's that spice rack, in addition to, of course, varietal, barrel usage, et cetera, and James will be able to get into some of that in a few minutes.
I know he's in the cellar right now, hanging out.
Exactly, just waiting for us to wrap up with our 17 minutes.
Very cool. And is it all the French oak, right? Is that what it is?
Nope. We're right around 93% French oak and 7% now Hungarian.
Oh, very nice.
We really started falling in love with about 10 years ago, and have just continued to, a little less than that, but have just continued to love it and use it.
And what does the Hungarian give to the wine?
Well, I always like the story, a lot of the French oak producers were getting their hand slapped for trying to sell you, a Tronce Forest barrel and lying about it. So a lot of people had to scrap their marketing strategies and then start marketing themselves on grain thickness. So when that happened, it was okay, if you guys are going to just market on grain thickness, I'm going to go somewhere that has even tighter grains, that has even more austere winters, and see what this wood really looks like. And that was really the impetus for it all, and just really liked it after that.
Very
and
nice.
it's big, it's complex, it adds so much kind of base tone and structure. It's pretty awesome.
Very cool. All right, so I just poured the 18. Talk to me. Talk to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always funny for me talking about them because, of course, the 18 coming off 17, which was, I mean, it was intense. Every single day in 17, I was out walking the vineyards twice a day, checking how vines were doing in the morning as they recuperated overnight, and then checking them at midday to see how the 100+ degree weather was treating them. And then 18 was, quite idyllic. It cooled off quite a bit after aeration. We had a nice long harvest period. I think we even had a little bit of rain right in the middle, so we had like 2 or 3 days where we weren't picking and we were just focusing on the winery, and it always creates just a little bit of slower period because stuff isn't coming in one on top of another. And when it's coming in, you don't have the time of saying, oh, we're just going to wrap it up for the day, take off. It's like, you got to be there, you got to take care of it, because when it's ready, and you don't have the time to wait on those things. So 18 for me was quite idyllic. It was, and it was an easier vintage to manage. You really got to bring stuff in as you want it, and I think it shows in the wine. And fortunately, it still has beautiful character, nice structure. I think it shows a little bit more probably voluminous than the 17 right now, and perhaps also at the same time a little less energetic. But it also is just a baby and a really beautiful wine in and of itself.
Yeah, I feel like this one has just a tad more, just a little more body. And definitely more fruity, I get more Napa with this one, if you will, if that makes sense at all.
To me, it makes total sense. I completely understand where that's coming from, and it's always the devil's advocate in me, because then I always harken back to the 17 and just so happy with how it turned out and love the energy. And it's always that thing that I always joke about, because so many times Napa's known for these big, muscular, heavy, meaty wines.
Yeah.
And I always joke about how I like to think of our wines not as the bodybuilder of Napa Valley, but we're the yogi master of the Napa Valley.
Yogi
We have that strength. We have that persistence. We're going to be able to hold that.
You got the core muscles. You don't have the big biceps. You have the nice core muscles.
Exactly. And we're limber and flexible.
That's the most important, right? You can be a yogini your whole life.
Yep. Balance, man. It's all about balance.
No, this is excellent, man. This is awesome. How much time do we have on this thing? Because we can go forever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're doing pretty good. We've got a couple more minutes, and then we'll start bringing James in to talk about the 2020 vintage.
Yeah, no. Overall, I think these are awesome. They're definitely, you could definitely see the difference based on, like you said, the terroir, the climate, Mother Nature. That plays a huge part in it. And I just admire winemakers in general, because you have to have extreme amount of patience. I can only imagine that probably crosses over into parenthood a little bit, like just the patience that you have just to have these vines grow and then also to go home. I could just only imagine. I think it's super cool what you guys done. And you studied, was it in Spain?
I lived in Spain. It was
Okay.
kind of my first introduction to wines, but I did study here and got my degree in enology and viticulture down at Fresno.
Okay, very cool, man.
Yeah. Well, no, Will, it's been awesome. I sure appreciate this. And yeah, if there's any other observations or thoughts you have specifically about the 17s or 18s, but no, it's been awesome having your support, having you part of the Spottswoode gang.
No, thank you. Yeah, even so, just people know, like, my style when I talk about wine, I can go through the grid and talk over people's head and be real solemn, but that's not my style. I love you're here, so for me to go in about the wine, it doesn't. I'd rather have you go, but I like to just explain the wine. I'm more about, like, yes, I understand the varietal. We can talk about the body. We can talk about the viscosity, the color, the nose, go through the whole thing. But it's important to just understand how the wine was made, because that's how you really get to learn and appreciate wine more, regardless of the varietal. So it's cool to sit here and speak to the man who did his thing with this wine, and I'm just very, very honored, and I'm thankful. I'm happy. Like, I appreciate you and Yanni and Molly and Sam that has me included in all this stuff, and I just think it's cool that you guys do that. So thank you again.
Well, I appreciate it, and I always love hearing that too, because it's always one of those funny things for me that intellectually, things are all about intent. So you start with these visions or these goals as a business owner, as a player, winemaker, etc. And then it's how you get from A to B that tells the story.
Yes.
And it is ultimately what we try to drink and what we try to put in the bottle, the time and the place, the energy, the effort, the family, the people.
No, very cool. And just as good as this cab is, so we, in my Wine MVP subscription, we put your 18 Sauvignon Blanc, I believe it was, which was lip smacking out of this world. I mean, it was juicy, it was tropical, it was, I know we're talking about these, but I just want to say, like, the Sauvignon Blanc is the real deal as well.
Cool. Well, Will, it's been awesome. It's always nice to have somebody else looking at this wine and sharing their own perspectives and just getting that feedback on it. I love it, and it keeps us true to what our job is.
No, thank you again so much. And I think everyone at Spottswoode, thank you. You got to be careful of Beth driving that vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. She's a little giddy.
Yeah, BC strong, Boston College. I see you, Rodney. Yes, Boston College. That's right. We won today. We beat Syracuse. But thank you again so much.
Thank you. And now we're going to bring in one of my partners in crime here at the winery, James, to talk a little bit about the actual current vintage. James is over in the barrel room, and we'll be able to go through a little bit about what the excitement of the last 2 months here in Napa has been like. But just want to let him say hi. James is our assistant winemaker and the man that keeps my feet grounded and keeps my head and where it's supposed to be some days.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I'm James. I'm the assistant winemaker. I do have an accent. I'm Australian. So I come from the west coast of Australia, from Perth, and been here for about 6 years now. And we did it, man. We got through another harvest.
Yeah, this one seemed a little bit more surreal. We'll just get the cat out of the bag. Yes, there have been fires, it seems, for about the last 2 months,
Right.
off and on. Some of them hit pretty close to home, and we certainly have had a lot of challenges this year. But to be on this side of it, and having tasted through everything we already have in the bottle, I've been feeling very, very fortunate as usual, and feeling like the team face masks and all came through pretty well.
Yeah, we did a pretty good job, all things considered. You know, I have a 3-month-old baby now, so getting through harvest with that was a challenge, and we did. and no daycare as well for a period of time, so operating the forklift successfully this year was definitely a positive. We got through it, and yeah, I think as you say, it's early days, but I think we're looking good. I think we're going to make a great wine.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, how everybody came together to get us through all of the ups and downs of people being evacuated. I know I was out of Calistoga for over 8 days.
How many times have you been evacuated now in the last 4 years?
Yeah, exactly. I have a couple people live on the Sonoma side and couldn't even drive over. So those that could make it up were coming in. It was nice, as usual. You know, the group here, there's about 9 of us all together to do all of the work in the vineyard and the winery throughout the year. So we're constantly going back and forth. Same group, always working together. So while we were down and not working out in the vineyard, we were able to get a lot of extra support in, and it was just, you know, any hands on deck any of the days that we needed it, and trying to get people in, especially on the smokiest days, just to get the core done. It's absolutely important to say that the LNU fire had started before we had harvested anything, so there certainly is a lot of conversation in and around that. But fortunately, we were completely picked off before the glass fire, and that was, of course, the one that burned right here through St. Helena and Calistoga, and was really the one that hit the closest to home. And obviously, hearts go out to everybody who actually lost property and lost vineyards, homes, wineries, etc. But
yeah, I'm pretty thankful we made a push to get those the backup generators in, because we sure put them to use this year.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Do you want to take advantage and give us a little get a little rundown of what you got going on over there in the barrel room?
Yeah. So I'm standing here in our 19th century pre-prohibition stone building. This was built by the old Craft winery. It was the old Craft winery built in 1884. And today we use this as our second year barrel aging room. It's perfect for this because the stone here is about 2 feet thick. So it keeps the temperature in here nice and consistent, which is what you want for aging wine. We air condition it to about 55, 56 degrees. And then what you see behind me is all of the 2019 red wine harvest. So I wanted to give you a little rundown of the 2019 harvest and how the wines got here and the rest of what needs to happen to get these wines into bottle. So the 2019s are just over halfway through their time in barrel. When I think back to the 2019 harvest as a growing season, we had a fairly wet spring, which made the canopies push really, really high and really big. It threw a lot of crop. So our team had to work quickly to open up the canopy and pulling leaves so we could minimize mildew pressure. Thankfully, we do have our own team to be able to do that in a timely manner. The growing season moving forward from there went relatively smoothly. Obviously, we've got pretty warm growing seasons. We've had a pretty warm growing season in 2019. Luckily, we didn't have any major disasters or fires or anything, which seems to be a recurring theme in Napa these days. But all in all, we picked off the fruit and we could make all those decisions without our hand really being forced too much, which is like the 2018, like Aaron was saying before. So everything came into the winery, we handpick everything at night off our 26 blocks that we have here, of our 37 acres. Everything goes into the winery, and as Aaron was saying, we co-ferment some things, we keep some things separate, but we go through fermentation and fermentation management. The 2019s, we're extracting really well, and we're really happy with how all of that went. Fermentation goes for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then we separate the wine and press off the skins and go down to barrel for the first time. The wines sit in barrel in our first year barrel room and another section of the winery for about a year. During that time, we go through our first round of blending trials. We actually do 2 blending sessions over the course of the wine, but the first, we look to create our core blend. So we'll sample all the different blocks that we have, all the different lots, and we'll look to start to marry together some of the lots that we know are going to make be Spottswoode quality. And we really feel like marrying those parcels of wine at the first year, at an early stage, really marries and makes a more synergistic wine in the end, which is what we want. So at the end of the first year of aging, we've done our blending trial. We'll pump the wine back into tank. We'll wash all the barrels, and then we'll roll the barrels over here into the stone building, which is how they get here. Very manual process. And I'll show you quickly how we make these rails here. I'm going to lift the barrel onto the rail here, so bear with me. So that's how we, it's a very manual process working with these rails here, but I kind of like it. You grow to love it, but if you ever want to come and do a harvest here, we'll whip you into shape really quick. We take on 2 interns every year, and they get exposure to everything, including how to build these beautiful rails here. The wine then sits in barrel for its second year of aging here in the stone building. And then we will go through at the end of that period, we'll go through a second blending trial. And this is a little bit more in depth, where we sample everything again. We've got the core blend put together. We've left out, aside from the core blend, a few of the blocks that, like our Cooper trials that we're doing, some of the blocks that we want to look at individually, maybe some of the younger blocks that we want to use for blending components. And we'll sit down and we'll, for about a week, we'll come in and we'll blend for about 4 hours every morning for about a week, even longer, to try and make the best wine we possibly can. And when we look at this, every 0.5% makes a difference in the final wine. So when we think we've got the blend, we make it again and we taste it the next day. And when we think that it's right, we'll probably make it again and test it again just to make sure that we've got the perfect wine. When we've finally done that, it's a pretty quick process. We'll blend everything to tank, everything gets filtered and then goes to bottle. It sits in bottle for about a year and then we release it to you. It's pretty simple. That's 2 years worth of work in about 2 minutes right there, but it keeps us busy. It keeps us doing what we love to do. I wanted to touch base a little bit about our oak program here. So as you see behind me, and Aaron has mentioned, we use mainly French oak with a little bit of Hungarian. We actually purchase from about up to 20 different cooperages, so 20 different barrel companies. We've got some that we purchase barrels from and have done are our staples for decades. And each barrel that you see here imparts a different signature onto the wine. So one of the ways we create complexity in our wine is to put our wine into many different types of barrels. And if I were to put the same wine into 10 different barrels and age that for 2 years, which is what we do, we call that our Cooper trial. But if I was to taste those blind, and if you were to taste those, you would think that they are 10 completely different wines. It's pretty remarkable. So what we do and how we think about our oak program is like a spice rack. So each barrel imparts its own spice. And you don't want too much of one. You just want a nice melange, a nice blend. So when you bring everything back together, you've got a more layered, complex Cabernet. So that's really the goal. And another thing I'll mention is that we use about, for our Spottswoode, about 60% new oak and about 40% two-year-old oak. So what that does is create a balance, whereas some, if you were to use 100% new oak, I think for our style, that what we go for, it would overpower the wine. Where we want the fruit to shine through, and the terroir that we have. It's so beautiful what we get off the estate here. We don't want to kill it with oak, so we find that we strike that balance at around 60%. For the Lindenhurst, a little bit more fruit forward style, we're a little bit lower, around 40% new oak. And what's actually happening when the wine is in the barrel here? It pretty much just sits there. We don't need to touch it. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we'll come through and we'll top up the barrels, because over time you can't actually notice it, but the wood's actually porous. So you actually get water and ethanol actually coming out of the staves, and oxygen is slowly ingressing into the wood. So that oxygen is really important because it stabilizes color, it helps polymerize the tannins and lengthens the mouthfeel and the texture of the wine. And because we're losing water and ethanol out of the barrel, there's a concentration effect that happens in the barrel. So over a 2-year period, your wine is just constantly getting concentrated. It's aging because of the oxygen that's going into the barrel. So what I look for when I'm tasting, I have my tools here. What I look for when I'm tasting out of barrel is how that barrel is integrating into the wine. This is the really, really hard part of winemaking right here.
Flower appearance, counting room. I'm Molly, and I don't want to turn down a taste of the 9. Cheers, guys.
So this is how we do a barrel sample. Really what I do most of the time is I'm cleaning tanks or I'm cleaning a drain somewhere. Very rare that we're actually in here. Actually, that's a lie. This is how we do a barrel sample. What I look for when I'm tasting a barrel sample is the aromatics, the integration of the oak, the texture, the mouthfeel. Does it need more time? How's the astringency of the tannins? Is the barrel overpowering? And just getting an idea of, obviously, we don't want any faults, so that's just that checklist goes through. But yeah, just generally the flavor characteristics, how the wine's looking. Does it, yeah, how long do I think we need to leave it in barrel? Generally, we're around 16 to 18 months in barrel is the sweet spot. But the 2019 is looking beautiful. I think it's going to be a stellar year. I wanted to just say, so cheers to you. Thank you for everyone's support. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do to the best of what we can. So thank you for all your support. And cheers.
Cheers.
Cool. Well, now we've seen a little bit of the 17, a little bit of the 18, a little bit of the 19 in barrel, and talk briefly on the 20. Obviously, in 20, we're just wrapping up. They've just been pressed off and gone down the barrels about 2 weeks ago. So it's just going through malolactic fermentation right now. And honestly, we're pretty excited. It was a year where yields were naturally down. Berry size was small because we had a very dry winter, relatively dry year last year. So the overall concentration and quality for 2020 was really high. There were a lot of really high expectations and high hopes for the vintage. So needless to say, and I'm glad we finally turned the lights on, so now you guys can see me a little better. But yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the 2020, and now we'll go back and start talking a little bit more with Beth and Lindy. One of the things that Harvest also always brings around to us is the memory and appreciation of our founder, Mary Novak. She passed away in 2016. And with her passing, we started the inaugural Mary's Blend, because that was always, she was a Sauv Blanc fan. She really didn't, she was not a Cabernet fan. It was not top on her list. So needless to say, that was a wine that we started, yeah, in remembrance and appreciation of her and everything she did for us. And we have that now here in front of us. Everybody's tasting it, so yeah.
For 2019,
on that side.
yeah, it's what we call our Mary's block. And of course, Aaron was very happy with me, I'm sure, when I came in sort of at the beginning of Harvest 16 and said, can we make a 100% estate Sauvignon Blanc for my mom? And at the time she was, you know, she did love Sauvignon Blanc. That was her absolute favorite wine, as Aaron noted. And my idea was just to make 100% Sauvignon Blanc and call it Mary's Block. And my hope and intention was that she would have been able to enjoy and taste it. And most unfortunately, cancer did not allow that. And she passed away before she got to taste this wine. But we make it for her and in her memory, because truly, she didn't just love the wine either. She loved the grapes too. I mean, we just have that 1.07 acres, and Sauvignon Blanc grapes are stunning. They're just extremely fun to taste when you're out in the vineyard. So anyway, we do love this wine.
And we put her on the label with her one of her black labs, so you'll notice a little icon on there.
Exactly.
Memory to her.
Yeah,
And then,
the circumstances around it, obviously, we weren't necessarily excited to make it to begin with. Fortunately, it was something that we absolutely could. We barrel ferment everything, so all of the original blocks are always kept isolated initially in their barrel fermentations. We use about 60. Historically, on the Sauvignon Blanc, we've always used a fair amount of about 50 to 60% stainless steel barrels, about 40 to 50% oak, with about 15 to 25% of that being new oak. There can be another 5% in there that comes from other things. So fortunately, everything was already kept in and of itself, kept separate. And it was something that when we were asked to do, we started looking at what we could. And the estate Sauvignon Blanc is always one of the top 2 or 3 blocks of all of the Sauvignon Blanc that we bring in for the blend. So we were able to find a bunch of barrels that we were able to isolate, and this is ultimately, in a sense, just a selection of the best we grow, the best we do with the varietal.
Okay, so should you move into the 1987 cab, Aaron?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay, so what we're doing here is we just, by the way, there's Carol Merrill. Some of you may remember. What was that show?
Door number 1, door number 2, door number 3.
Can't remember the name of the show. Anyway, pathetic.
But trying.
But anyway, we're opening our 1987 just to show something from our first decade. Tony Soter was our founding winemaker, and we started making wine, as we mentioned.
And it was also a special year for another reason.
Yes.
It was. I'm sorry. It's the year that I started working here. So so my mom had started the winery. Our mom had started the winery in 1982, and then I had been in the wine business in San Francisco after college. And when she needed some help up here, she invited me to come and help her a couple days a week, and it turned into full time. And I have been here ever since. So I feel very fortunate to have worked alongside my mom since '87. Lindy joined the two of us in 1992.
So
she
we're
had
not
been a
opening.
bathing suit salesperson, and she moved over to wine.
I had
and did very,
transferred my sales skills from bathing suits to wine. Can you imagine?
Exactly.
It's been fun.
But the 1987 is, this wine is made 100% from the vines that my mom and dad replanted when we moved here. So it's all AXR1. It's primarily Cabernet Sauvignon with about 5% Cabernet Franc. This wine would have been literally barrel aged right in the basement here of our home. We custom crushed up through 1998. So this wine is a real, and just the 85, 86, and 87 are really the wines that put us on the map.
The Wine Spectator was, we were in the top 10 wines in those 3 years, and that kind of helped with sort of our trajectory with recognition and some press, which was really neat.
Exactly. So we made this. The 1987 is just a wonderful wine, and it's just something that we wanted to share. I mean, we're enjoying it. Unfortunately, you can't drink it, but we never get to open these bottles either. You know, they're older. We have a relatively limited cellar. So hey, if anybody out there ever has library wines they want to sell, you may have a buyer. But it's a real treat for us to taste these, because to see this after 30 years, right? I mean, it's longer than that, but the 17 is our current release, and so now that's our 30 years since then. It's a remarkable wine to taste, kind of the beautiful saline and just kind of a little bit of rose petal and a little bit of caramel, which is interesting. Anyway, a wonderful wine. So,
and I always like looking back at these old wines too, because these are kind of there's so many things that have stayed the same, in the sense that, Tony really brought in organics in 1985, and Tony really set the foundation for so much of what we do within the vineyard, as far as layout, trellis, style, structure, row spacing, et cetera, et cetera. So many things that he did really laid the groundwork for it. But by late 80s, right around 87, actually, was when we first started to see phylloxera in the vineyard and started to have to face the reality of a next stage of replants. So even though so many things that he was doing at that stage are still very similar to what we do nowadays, the plants are totally different. We're on modern rootstocks now. We're not on AXR1 or native natural own-rooted vinifera vines.
And we actually have trellising. We actually have some trellising versus just the old California sprawl.
Yeah, which our mom kind of objected to the trellising. She didn't like the modern, slightly more industrial look. She wanted the sprawling, irregular vines.
Well, and I can see the charm in that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Charm.
But for me, on my end, it's always nice to see. So I appreciate opening it up. I hope everybody is enjoying tasting all the myriad wines that I keep seeing popping up on the chats that everybody's drinking tonight. And I'm going to check out and just say thank you, everybody, and hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Well, so Beth and I just want to give a shout out and a huge thank you to our amazing winemaking team. I mean, they
Yes.
work so hard, and in a challenging vintage like the 2017, they made a killer wine. And the 2018, just a day or two ago, we received some lovely press from Lisa Perotti Brown at the Wine Advocate, a perfect score. And we're not going to read the whole thing to you, although we'd love to, but she finished up with a word that I haven't heard for a while, wowzers. And we thought that kind of captured it all.
That was great. She has really, really great words about it,
Yeah.
but it's very exciting. So Aaron, yeah, just thank you very much.
so much.
James and Corinne and Molly and the whole team. And frankly, of course, our whole team that a lot of you know in our office. Erica is there answering many things. Tiffany is there. Robin is there. Mary Pat is there. I mean, everybody, it's all hands on deck. Samantha is down here. Barb is down here.
We have an amazing,
amazing
amazing
team.
crew.
So we feel very fortunate for that, and we just want to thank you for that. So now, just quickly, we have on our. You have to show your little T-shirt.
Oh
thing.
my gosh! Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, and
so we have our own little version of the Lorax. We have our Spottswoode T-shirts from last year with our little Lorax, and so really it sort of jumps into our really strong commitment to the environment and our strong commitment to long-term multi-generational family ownership. So this is an agricultural business. We do everything begins and ends in the vineyard. We are farmers, and that is the very first thing. And so as we look at we've been here, as we mentioned, it'll be 50 years next year. We're looking to our next 50 years and beyond. And we are very committed as a family. Lindy and I, as the second generation who work here, we have 3 siblings. And we're all committed to the long-term perpetuation of this as a family business.
And part of that is in environmental endeavors, with everything that is happening around the world and here with fires and increasing temperatures and drought. We really need to be forward thinking about this and try to kind of get ourselves around the issue of what we should do to be proactive.
Really good stewards of our land. So we got kind of inspired by the Lorax because we've always loved the Lorax, and
we love rhymes. We love Dr. Seuss.
So we did come up with a rhyme. So go ahead, Lindy. Do you want to read it? Because Lindy actually writes very good rhymes.
Well,
so we came up with a very short rhyme that sort of inspired us.
We are Spottswoode. We speak for the vines. We care for our land and make honest wines.
There you go. So that's sort of where we got started. We had a lot of fun with that. And so from that has come a really, really strong move to being a great stewards of this property and of our environment, the community, and of everything that we do. We just got B Corp certification, which we're really proud of. That's not an easy thing to get. And it's something that we've been working toward. It's just the way we operate. And so we're really
operated for a long time.
So
it means that our aspiration is to be in business so that we are really a company that is here. We're trying to do good, that transcends just making a killer wine. And we kind of hope that all of these things, when you're enjoying Spottswoode, you feel them all and appreciate both our mission and the actual quality of the wines. And we didn't want to forget to mention our Lindenhurst. We talked a little bit about our Sauvignon Blanc, but we didn't want to leave out our sort of our third sibling. And we've been making that wine for 18 years, 50,
since 02. You do the math. Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
not named after me. Linden trees on the property. One of the names of the properties over its history, and it's evolved. It started out as estate fruit, and it's evolved into kind of our rendition of Napa Cabernet with fruit from really killer vineyards. And so we know that some of you are fans of that wine as well, which we really appreciate.
And like with the Sauvignon Blanc, where we have long-term relationships with our growers, and Aaron works closely with each one of them. They're moving toward organics, and we're really encouraging people to move in that direction and incentivizing them to do so, because we think it's that important. And, it builds resiliency into, we believe that the reason that we've been able to make it through some of these more challenging vintages and some of the extremes that we're experiencing is because our vines and our land have an inherent resilience due to both our organics and our biodynamics. We have biodiversity. We're solar on everything. We're part of something called International Wineries for Climate Action that was started by the Jackson family and the Torres family in Spain.
And
And
we've
so-
done creek restoration. We're
Yeah.
watching our water usage and trying to reduce that.
Correct.
We're doing many, many things to try to, contribute to a healthier planet. And we're hoping that we kind of set an example, and
Yes.
and it seems like we are, for other people to kind of join
Mhm.
on that trajectory.
Yeah, it's something that makes us feel
Yeah.
really good. But also, again, remember that this is an agricultural business, and so we really do rely on a relatively stable climate and an ability to operate. And we think we're just doing, we're doing absolutely everything we can, and that feels really good. And we
Yeah.
do have a next generation.
Yeah, some nieces and nephews. I happen to not have children, but the rest of my 4 siblings do, and we've had some of the children working at the winery and the vineyard over the summers and helping in the tasting room. And so there's a hope and anticipation that somebody or somebody's plural might want to come on board. That would be really cool.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So we are at a point where we want to thank you so much. I mean, truly, for taking the time out of this amazing day that we've had to join us here. We are just so truly honored that you would take this kind of time, that you consider our wines worthy of your cellar, of your enjoyment, that many of you have been with us for so long, and we just couldn't do it without you, and we truly appreciate it. And we cannot say that that's not just words. Those are deep sentiments, and we truly appreciate everything you do. So we want to say cheers.
Cheers.
Whatever you have. We wish you a great fall.
And very happy holidays. And we look forward to, maybe we'll do another virtual tasting.
And we look forward to welcoming you back to Spottswoode
Yeah.
when you're able to visit us. So please do visit us and come and visit our beautiful property and enjoy our wines with us.
And if you have feedback on, this is our first. So if you have feedback on our tasting, we hope it's all positive. Let us know.
And if it's not, let us know that too. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy fall to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays after that. Yeah. Thank
Take
you
care.
again for being
Thank
part of
you.
it. Bye.
Bye.